Welcome to my first vegetable garden. Today's video is all about crops you should direct seed or transplant in April, your cool weather crops. And I'm going to focus on the easier ones to grow for new gardeners. And we'll just talk about, do you direct seed them? Do you put them in as transplants? Pros and cons of both. But I want to give you growing examples of them so that you can see what they're going to look like. I'm in Maryland Zone 7, cool weather crops. Really enjoy 40 to 50 degree nights, 40 to 50 degree soil temperature, 50 to 60 degree days. When you get into later spring, early summer, and the soil temperatures, the top 2, 4, 6 inches, when I talk about soil temperature, when that top 6 inches is getting into the 60s, 70s, 80s, the days are getting into the 70s and 80s, it's too warm for a lot of these cool weather crops. And what happens is instead of them growing and forming the vegetable that we want, they speed up growth, flavor changes, they try to flower and set seed. So you want these to be grown over a good 90-day period when the temperatures are cooler. This is, right here, this is flowering. This is not how you're going to grow it. But that is bok choy, which actually survived from last November to the spring. You can't tell by looking at it, but pak choy and bok choy are these beautiful little Chinese cabbages that head to about 6 to 8 inches. They are perfect to plant by seed. Want to space them about 6 inches apart, put 2 seeds per hole, thin them down to one plant, and you're going to get this nice loose head of Chinese cabbage. In the back there, that's arugula. That's what with the white flowers. Arugula looks like that when it fully matures, so it gets pretty big. But arugula is great to plant now. Direct seed that. 2 seeds per hole, thin it down to one plant, and just let it grow and pick the leaves as you want. Mixed in here, it's hard to see, are some mustard greens. We'll talk about them when we get into the main garden. Right here, you can press in your onion sets. Onion sets are when you buy a bag of onions and they're just like these little tiny baby onions. You come out, you press them in about 2 to 3 to 4 inches apart, depending on what size you want to grow them to. These have been in here for about 4 weeks. But you could put in your onion sets. Again, those are the little round onions that you see in a bag. Lettuce, you can direct seed. You can also put them in as transplants. The benefit of transplants is that maybe, March, April, maybe it's too cold for these to really germinate quickly from seed. Just because you put a seed in the ground and it says germination takes 7 days, it doesn't mean it's going to germinate in 7 days if the soil temperatures and the conditions aren't right. So you do transplants indoors. You grow lettuce 4 or 5 weeks indoors, you bring it out here, you get a little jump on the season. But you can direct sow lettuce. That's a red romaine, that is a red leaf lettuce, and that's spinach. So spinach, lettuces, all can be direct seeded now, or if you want, you can grow some transplants and put them in. Other beautiful crops to put in now are carrots. These are carrots that I put in actually in November, and when the cold comes, they just sit there. Now that it's warming up, they're taking off, but now's the perfect time to direct seed carrots. And I would put in 2 carrot seeds per hole, thin them down to 1, and then you want to space these 2 to 3 inches apart, usually in a straight line. Carrots can take a while to germinate, and if you look closely, you see the tops are getting chewed off. I do have deer that come in here. So these are probably all going to get chewed down. Usually I protect them or cover them. When we go inside, I'll show you some more carrots. Another great crop to grow are potatoes. And I've got some laying around on the ground that as I planted my potatoes into the beds, I found some potatoes that overwintered. So I'm just kind of letting them sit there and I'm going to replant those. But you can plant potatoes in a container. You just want to have nice loose soil with lots of organic matter, fertilizer, and then press the potato down about 4 inches deep. You want to plant them 4 to 6 inches apart, and you can grow potatoes. They're a wonderful crop to plant in March and April in many areas. And then you can see in here I also have cabbage. Cabbage is a great plant to plant as a transplant. They take longer to grow, and here in Maryland the ground warms up pretty quickly. So I like growing my cabbage for about 6 weeks, 7 weeks indoors, and then I put transplants outdoors. But you can also direct seed cabbage, and I would put in 2 seeds again, and I always recommend at least 2 seeds. This way if one doesn't germinate, you're not waiting around. You can always thin it down. And then for cabbage, because it gets really wide, you could get like a 12-inch to 24-inch spread, I'd like to put in a good 12 to 14 inches, 16 inches in between the cabbage plants. And I leave distance on the side. So this cabbage will fill up this whole space along here. I wouldn't put other cabbages close together. What happens is if you have all this greenery growing together and filling in a lot of space, sometimes the bugs and insects and pests show up more quickly, they multiply faster, and it just causes more problems. Spreading out your vegetables, giving them airflow really does make a difference. Right in there, this is protected by chicken wire so those rabbits don't get it. I have red romaine lettuce, and they're spaced maybe every 6 to 8 inches apart. Nice long row. I love the romaine. All right, let's spin around, go into the garden. Now in here I have different crops growing. A lot of these survive the winter here in Maryland because it's been getting warmer. So your plants should not look this big unless, you know, you started them in November and they survived. Peas, I absolutely recommend peas. Peas need trellising support, so I would just put in some bamboo poles like that, tree branches, anything. The peas here have been in the ground since March 4th. Today is April 8th. I probably have, real quick count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, I don't know, 15. There's probably 100 pea plants in here. I plant them about in ½ an inch to an inch deep, 2 to 3 inches apart. I love peas, highly recommend peas. It's probably one of the best crops to grow as a brand new gardener. Inside here, you can see more of the red romaine. It's protected. Here are the mustard greens. Mustard greens grow extremely well from seed. These were transplants, but they grow extremely well from seed. 2 seeds per hole. This is a, it's a red giant mustard green. That's purple kale in the back. All beautiful cool weather crops. These are onion bunches. Now the sets are the round onions. The bunches are these long onions that look like they got pulled out of the ground early. They wrap them in a band. It's like 50 of them. They're called bunches, and they've just been planted. You know, it's very similarly to the sets. So onions are a great crop to put in there. I have some transplants in here most of the time, and it really depends on when you're putting these in. A lot of these you could put in March, but you'd want to put in transplants. In April, because the soil is warming up, the seeds are going to germinate much more quickly. So you still have time. I have Swiss chard, kale, and some red lettuce. A lot of people love garlic. The garlic here is hardneck garlic, and I have videos on that. This was planted back in November, and hardneck garlic likes a cold period. They like the Januaries, the Februaries here in Maryland. That cold really sets them up to form these beautiful, you know, cloves, bulbs of garlic. Well, maybe you didn't have a chance to plant garlic. This is softneck garlic. This is usually what you find right along the edges there, what you find in grocery stores. And I just pressed a clove in there maybe 2 weeks ago. You can still press in softneck garlic about 1 inch deep, maybe 2 inches deep at the most, and just let it grow. It may not form, you know, the perfect bulbs, but you're going to get some garlic. You can eat the greenery, and it's a fun way to grow garlic. That's going to be ready towards the end of June, but you can still get your garlic in the ground now. What else do we have growing? So coming down here, you're going to see a lot of the arugula. Here's some Bibb lettuce. This was put in maybe 4 weeks ago. It's just starting to take off. Pretty beat up because it was getting cold with frost. Frost doesn't kill your cool weather crops, but it can, you know, slow them down. And just because these have been in the ground for 4 weeks, they were transplants, doesn't mean they're going to grow huge because the temperatures were cold. Now that it's beginning to warm, this is all going to take off. And when you see this yellowing, don't worry about the outer leaves. They're going to get a drink of water-soluble fertilizer today, and the garden's going to get watered because you can see the soil starting to crack. Plenty of moisture in there, but you want to keep your garden well watered. Peas in the back, planted a little bit differently. They're about 1 inch apart, and they're going to be trellising up this closet shelving right in the back there. Over on this side, I have endive. I do recommend endive. It's a little bit different than your lettuces or your spinach. It has a mildly bitter taste to it, very mild. I really like it. It's kind of hefty, it's got a good crunch, holds dressing well. Love endive, and I plant it every year. Celery, I don't recommend that for new gardeners. It takes a little bit of work, can take time to get going. But endive, plant it just like your spinach. Your lettuce is 1 to 2 seeds. Good spacing. I want these to form full heads, but I do really recommend, getting endive in there. I'm going to show you some spinach that was put out as transplants that I grew indoors, and they were about 6 weeks old when I put them out there. You can see some lettuce back there, some more endive, and this is spinach. So spinach about every 4 to 6 inches apart. Transplants that grew about 6 weeks. You could do the same thing. You could drop in 2 seeds, but I do recommend getting spinach in now. I have more kale that overwintered. Any kale, arugula, most plants that overwinter and they're coming into their 2nd year, they're going to flower. But you can eat the buds, you can eat the flower. It's just a different way to enjoy the plants. I am growing broccoli and cauliflower right in there. I also have some Brussels sprouts back there. They're a little bit more challenging to grow, so I don't recommend them for new gardeners right now. The white butterfly that flies around comes in, lays eggs on there. You get the green cabbage moth, or the green cabbage worm that really devastates them. So they take more work, and you do really have to have the timing down right to get nice crowns of broccoli or a nice head of cauliflower. You just need the right amount of cold weather. So I'm skipping these for now, but if you want to give them a try, you could give them a try. I'd recommend planting them as transplants. More romaine, carrots, spinach, and you can see how big things are starting to get. You have plenty of time. If you have the high heat of your summer rolling in May, well, it may be too late. If the heat doesn't really come to early June, middle of June, later June, you still have time for all these cool weather crops. Right in here are beets that I put in as seeds back in March. You can put them in now, and these are the beets coming up, all in there. Lots of weeds. I'm gonna have to, clean that up a little bit. But direct seeding your beets right now, perfect. I have cylindra, a golden beet, more orange, and then the Detroit red beet, standards. I love beets. I grow a lot of them. And maybe the last crop that I recommend, and there's a lot of them, these are just some that I wanted to highlight. Right in here are turnips. And these are put in, I can tell you, they were put in on 3/14. So these are about 3 weeks old. That's a turnip, 2 seeds. I would just thin it down to 1. And turnips are probably one of the easiest crops to grow for new gardeners. They love the cool weather. You can eat the greens. You get a beautiful big bulb. They're delicious. And actually, I forgot, the main thing that I recommend are radishes. Let me show you. I love radishes. So let me talk about succession planting. Because if you plant, you saw that I have a lot of lettuce planted, lots of peas. Peas are a little bit different, that I want the peas to come in. We just eat a lot of them. However, I had like 50 lettuce plants planted. It's really hard to eat 50 heads of lettuce over a week's period. Part of that's, for a video and for teaching purposes. Same thing with radishes. I have 5 different radishes in here that went in on 2/26. Radishes only take 25 to 45 days to mature. However, in February, it was really cold, so they're just getting going. So just because the seed packet says 30 days to maturity, that doesn't take into account how long it takes for the seeds to germinate. Now, a lot of radishes in here. I'd like to plant them in a row with 2 inches in between, about 2-inch spacing there. And I put 2 seeds per hole, and I leave 2 radish seeds per hole because the radish bulbs will push each other to the side. These are all going to mature relatively closely together. What I recommend is, if you start planting in April, start planting in May, whatever works time-wise for you. They like the cool weather. It has to stay cool. Maybe plant, let's just say, 50 radishes first. You let them germinate. After they germinate and are growing 10 to 14 days, you put in some more seeds. This way you're planting in succession, so you're not going to get 500 radishes all at once. You're going to get 50. You're going to eat those. A couple weeks later, another 25 or 50 come. After that, another couple weeks, more radishes come. So you're doing them in succession. And that's a good way to plant, your lettuces and stuff like that. You just, have to keep in mind is how much can you eat? And are you going to be able to eat it all if it, comes to maturity at the same time? And then finally, we have collards. Go ahead and plant 2 seeds per hole, thin them down to 1. more endive, you can see some peas in there, and then kale. 2 seeds per hole, thin them down to 1 plant. Kale and collards will continue to grow through the summer. They do pretty good in the warm weather. Kale will continue to grow through the summer, and you can just eat the leaves. Collards sometimes produce flowers, just depending on what's going on. These are all my strawberry towers. Please subscribe. This is my second YouTube channel, my first vegetable garden, really geared for new gardeners. I go into longer explanations, give you a little bit more information than my main channel, The Rusted Garden. So the videos here are longer, but they're hopefully here to help teach you, how to have fun in your garden, grow food, and just be more successful overall. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. Have fun in your garden, experiment, and don't worry if something goes wrong. Gardening is a learning curve. You'll figure it out and you'll always get production. Thanks for watching.